teams went up and down the field, just seemingly without any kind of roadblock from the defense. This was absolute domination from the opposing offenses on either sides of these matchups. I love the decision to go for two. I think that was the right one. The thing that I question to look at and say, hey, what are you doing, is the play that they drew up. The fact that you had Jamar Chase one-on-one on the outside, you drew motion, you saw it was man coverage. There was no one that could guard Jamar Chase that last night. Not a single stop Jamar Chase from catching footballs last night. And yet, they decide to target backup tight end Tanner Hudson, who had caught a touchdown earlier, had converted on a fourth down, had played a very good game, but on a must-have situation. Regardless of penalties not being called, which that's a conversation we can have another day. I know penalties were there. I like the fact that the refs didn't call a penalty. Honestly, I don't think it affected the play that much. This was a post-play penalty. He never, like Richard Sherman was saying in the post-game, he never looked over to Mike Gesicki to get that holding call. If they had looked, throw the flag, but he never looked over to that side, which is another thing. Jamar Chase is on that side. Why aren't you even looking his direction? That should be your first read. Throw something up to him. The way he's been playing, I thought they were going to run a fade ball for him or something. They ended up not doing that. To each their own, right? Again, hindsight is 2020. That's not what I would have done, but there's lots of decisions over there, lots of different, lots of different ways that could have played out. I love the decision to go for two. This was just an incredible game. These two teams are on very opposite sides of where you expect them to be right now. The Ravens are closer to where you thought they would be at the beginning of the season, but the defense is awful, and it's been the same way all season long, ever since they lost Mike McDonald, their defensive coordinator, goes to Seattle. Obviously, now their defense is the 23rd best scoring-wise in the league. This is not where you want to be. This is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. This is a team that's coming out, and their goal this year is to beat the Chiefs, make the Super Bowl. Anthony says he thinks Joe Burrow is starting to realize he can't focus on Jamar, because if he does, people can jump his routes. I understand what you're saying, but Jamar Chase in that game had 11 catches for 264 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had just burned double coverage for a beautiful touchdown throw in the back to tie or win the game or go up with 38 seconds remaining. You had one-on-one coverage with a corner that cannot cover him. If you look at the play, I know he didn't look over to the left. Jamar does a deep in cut. He ends up beating his man. I understand what you're saying, Anthony, with the fact that you can't key in on a guy. But when a guy is having a day like that, when you have Jamar Chase, who nearly sets another franchise record or nearly beats his own franchise record of 266 yards, in a game-winning situation, I'm throwing to him a one-on-one situation. I'm not throwing it to my backup tight end. I'm not throwing it to Tanner Hudson. And we can debate about this. I understand why you don't, and I think you make a good point. You can't just key in on him. But for one play, I don't think it makes a big difference, especially one-on-one, to key in on him, because it's all or nothing, and they end up walking away with nothing. Regardless, this is a game that, again, had some positives from the Bengals. The Bengals start off slow seemingly every single season, and I think that's something we need to watch out for, because that's something that can't continue to happen if this is a Bengals team that wants to continue to be treated as contenders. It seems to happen every year, whether it be health-related or not. But they finally seem to get their groove. The only teams they've beaten, the 4 wins they have all come against 2-win teams. That's it, just 2-win teams. 2-7 teams are all the teams that they've beaten this season. And they're beating up on the ones they're supposed to beat most of the time, which is generally a good thing. But as good as the defense is starting to play, and the defense is starting to play better, for the second time this season, they have been the team that seemingly has figured something out against Derrick Henry. And maybe that's just because the Ravens like to attack the corners a little bit more of the Bengals rather than run. But they slowed Derrick Henry down again, held him under 70 yards. That's an accomplishment in its own right. This is a Bengals team that's still fighting for playoff positioning. This was a brutal one for them to lose. And again, everything's going to come down to that 2-point play. I like the refs didn't blow the whistle because who wants the refs to decide the game? Would have been the argument on the other way for the Ravens. I know it was definitely a holding penalty. There's no doubt about that. It was definitely a roughing the passer penalty, but still, it's one of those things that I kind of like that they're letting them play a little bit. But I do understand the argument. It was a good game, and there's nothing more you can ask out of it. That's all you want out of a Thursday night football game. The AFC North is basically wraps. It doesn't feel like the Bengals have a chance to get back in there. That's not to say they can't make the playoffs. They go on a bit of a run here. The AFC North schedule isn't the hardest down the stretch for the Bengals in specific. They have a game with the Chargers coming up next, and then they have a bye. They finish it up on one of the easier schedules down the stretch. They get the Steelers twice, the Cowboys, the Titans, the Browns, and the Broncos. Obviously, you get 3 division games. They could go either way, but outside of that, the Titans and the Cowboys have been pretty bad. The Broncos are a team that when they go up against good competition have not been able to keep it up. This is a team that I still think could find a way to slip into the playoffs. Do I think they're going to go in very confidently and dominate? I don't. But this is another one of those teams that they can, as we've seen, keep up with anybody offensively. It's just a question of whether or not the defense is going to be able to step up. And they kind of did in this game, but they weren't able to make all the plays. It was a great game. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson have career days, and that could have been a battle for the MVP award, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think now people are going to start to give a little bit more respect to Joe Burrow on that MVP debate, and I really think they should because he's putting up incredible numbers right now. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we go on our game picks. The NFL game picks are coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my sound. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, November 8th. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the thriller that was the Thursday night football game that saw the Ravens escape with their 7th victory of the season, 35-34 in a divisional matchup at home. In this segment, we go over the rest of the NFL slate. 13 games to go over. Come on, play along with me. On the season, we're 83-55 so far. 10 wins last week, 10 out of 15. We're on a pretty good roll right now. If you want to play along, we're gonna go and pick every single game. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, November 8th. But like I was saying, NFL game picks on the way here. been on a bit of a heater here, if I'm being completely honest with you. 10 wins this 10 out of 15, 12 out of 16 the last couple weeks. We're looking to keep that going. We're starting off in Germany. Maybe the ugliest game they could have possibly sent out there for an international game. But we get the New York Giants taking on the Carolina Panthers. The Giants favored by 6.5 points in this one. That is a lot of points. The Carolina Panthers said they're starting Bryce Young. Bryce Young coming off maybe his best game as a pro, definitely his best game since coming back, leads a game-winning drive. Chuba Hubbard gets paid. Nice contract for a running back that's having a career season. The Giants, they're going to do their thing. Tyrone Tracy, I think, is due for a huge day in Germany. The rookie 5th-round pick out of Purdue, ever since taking over the starting role, has been kind of a revelation over there. That Panthers defense is really bad, and Daniel Jones is also really bad. But I think that Panthers defense is just slightly worse than Daniel Jones is, and I think that Giants defense might feast with lots of sacks. Look for Dexter Lawrence to have a huge day against that offensive line. I'm taking the Giants to win this one in a close one, 27-23. We head back to America, back across the pond for a divisional matchup to kick off the 1 o'clock slate as the Denver Broncos travel to Kansas City to take on the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs favored by 7.5 in this one. An interesting matchup here. Obviously, you have to play it a little closer when it's a divisional matchup, regardless of if it's the Chiefs playing the Raiders or the Broncos, right? These are teams that you're always going to play a little bit closer. The Broncos defense is no joke, and we saw in the divisional matchup earlier this season, the one that the Chiefs had against both the Raiders and the Chargers, they were a lot closer than people were thinking, still within one score. I think it's going to be a kind of similar game. The Chiefs also have not been blowing their opponents out. I think, honestly, the Broncos and the Chiefs are built very similarly. They're both centered around the defense, which is not something that you expect out of the Chiefs. The Broncos, that's to be expected. You obviously have Pat Surtain over there, a very, very good corner who's going to continue to do really, really good things. It's going to be an interesting matchup with him and DeAndre Hopkins after Hopkins shows out with 2 touchdowns in his second game. But the Chiefs are a ground and pound team. They like to run the ball, like to establish the run with Kareem Hunt, and Kareem Hunt's been doing a really good job. I think it's going to be tough this week with the Broncos, but I think they're going to be able to get a little bit of it done. The Broncos have been more susceptible to the run than the pass, obviously, and I think with Patrick Mahomes out there, he played his best game of the season. The Chiefs should go in there, win this game at home. 7.5 is a lot, but I think I'm going to roll with it. I think they win 17-27. Pittsburgh travels to Washington to take on Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. The Pittsburgh Steelers coming off of a bye week. They're finally getting healthy. A interesting trade deadline for them. They go out and they get more wide receiver help with Mike Williams, kind of an older version of George Pickens. They're really going for that jump ball receivers, but Washington got help of its own. They went out and they got Marshawn Lattimore, so kind of a new on new over here. It's going to be interesting to see how much these new additions play and what kind of effect it has. I think this is a much bigger deal for Washington, obviously. You have Mike Williams coming in to play as this secondary receiver, this number 2 guy, where Marshawn Lattimore is coming in to be the corner to really help with this Washington defense. And despite what the numbers say, the corners have been the weakest part of the Washington defense. You can look at the numbers and it says they've been very susceptible to the run, but that's because they've been having to put so much help with their linebackers playing much deeper to go up against the pass to help their corners out, to help their corners out a little bit, that they've been more susceptible to these runs. Now that you get Marshawn Lattimore, I think it's going to be a lot harder to run against this defense. The strength of that defense is up the middle with the defensive tackles, with the linebackers, Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner. I think this is a Washington defense that's going to immediately get a lot better from this move, and this is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that's pretty much going to stay the same. That's not even talking about the strength of this Washington football team, that being the offense. The most prolific offense in the league right now. They show no signs of stopping. This Jaden Daniels has been amazing at not taking sacks. They also don't have Brian Robinson Jr., which I think could be a bigger blow than a lot of people think to that offense. He is a huge part of it, kind of like a thunder and lightning duo with the quarterback in Jaden Daniels. He's not going to be there. They still have Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, who have been, filling in nicely for these teams. I think Washington takes care of business pretty easily. Favored by 3 in this one. I think they win 30-22. Then we have Jacksonville. Jacksonville hosts the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota favored by 6.5, and honestly, I think that's a little bit short. It was just announced earlier today that it's unlikely that Trevor Lawrence is starting, which means we get another we get Mac Jones part 2. He gets traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the offseason. Obviously, the Patriots don't need Mac Jones anymore after drafting Drake May. Mac Jones gets a shot. He's played in a couple of late game situations where they're getting absolutely blown out. He has not looked good. Mac Jones has looked awful all season long. I don't think that changes now. And I think that Minnesota Vikings defense, which just has been one of the best in the league, should absolutely demolish them. I don't think Jacksonville really stands much of a chance in this one. Minnesota wins pretty handily, 33-14. Atlanta travels to New Orleans. Atlanta favored by 3.5 in this one. The Saints have fired their coach. Watch out for that fired head coach boost, the interim head coach boost. That's something to keep an eye on here. I do think the Saints are just a mess right now. Unclear about the status of Chris Olave in this one. They're just injured up and down the roster, and I think the Falcons are going to be able to take advantage of that. But it's a division matchup. They're in New Orleans. They're playing their first game with an interim head coach. That is a lot of things working against the Falcons. That being said, I think the Falcons are just so much of a better team. They've been playing seemingly better every single week. If that defense can step up and play the way that it does every once in a while, this shouldn't be close. But I'm picking this Atlanta team to do their job. Beat the Saints. Don't snap that 7-game losing streak. That's something you got to keep in mind as well. I'm leaning towards the Saints on this, towards the Falcons on this one, 31-20. San Francisco travels to Tampa Bay, a Tampa Bay defense that, despite playing really effectively against the Chiefs last week, has continued to give up a lot of points every single time they step on the football field. Tampa Bay has given up over 30 points now 3 straight games. That is not very good. 3 straight games of over 30 points, and playing a San Francisco 49ers team that is getting Christian McCaffrey back is not the way that you want to start off. I think this defense is going to get absolutely shredded by the San Francisco 49ers. It's not going to be a fun day to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The offense could keep it close, but I don't think the defense is going to do nearly enough to keep them in this game like they did with the Chiefs. I think San Francisco covers that 6.5 point spread. They win 37-26. Buffalo traveling to Indianapolis. The Bills take on the Colts. The Colts obviously are in the midst of a quarterback situation, one of their own doing. Joe Flacco seemingly in line to be the starter. Josh Allen playing like an MVP. This is not going to be pretty again. We saw what the Vikings were able to do to that defense. The Bills defense, while not as crazy as the Vikings defense is still something you don't want to mess with. Joe Flacco, I think, will play a better game, but without Michael Pittman, it's going to make it a little bit harder. More attention will be drawn to Josh Downs. More attention will be drawn to these other to Adonai Mitchell, to the rest of it. And you need a big game. You need a big game out of Jonathan Taylor to keep this close. I think the Bills' offense is just going to be too much. They win 35-21. The Bears host the Patriots. Bears favored by 6 in this matchup. That is one that the Bears need badly. I'm one that maybe is too quick to call things must-win games, but this feels like a must-win game if Matt Eberflus wants to save his job. I don't think Matt Eberflus should have a job right now, but this is a Bears team that is sliding, not just in the standings, not just in my power rankings, but they're sliding seemingly mentally as well. And that is not a good look for an NFL team. You cannot have that if you want to be successful in the NFL this year. The Bears favored by 6. I think they'll find a way to win this one, but I don't think it's going to look pretty. And I think that New England has a real shot to take this one. I think the Bears win still 24-21. The Titans now back to starting Will Levis. He is supposed to be the starter as they travel to the Chargers in LA. LA favored by 7 in this one. The Titans defense has been ravaged by injuries, and that's the thing that's kept them in the game early in the season. Will Levis against this a very good Chargers defense, a Chargers defense that if you give them the opportunities, they will take them. He's not been very smart with the football, but he's someone that could just turn it on and somehow throw for 4 touchdowns out of nowhere. I wouldn't be the most surprised. I still think this Chargers defense is going to be good enough to shut them down, and I think the Chargers win 27-17. The Eagles travel to Dallas in what seemed like a much better game even last week. Dak Prescott not starting. It will be Cooper Rush after Dak suffered that hamstring injury. CeeDee Lamb good to go, but this is a Cowboys team that is limping into week 10. This is not what you expected out of the Dallas Cowboys as they continue to struggle. Everything seemingly built against them this season. It's a dead season for them at this point. They're not out of it yet, but this could be the final nail in the coffin. As long as Nick Sirianni doesn't coach the Eagles out of this one, they're high-end talent. They're actually completely healthy. Jalen Hurts off the injury report. A.J. Brown is going to be good to go, and I think that's going to be the death of them. Saquon Barkley should run wild in this game. It's not going to be pretty in Dallas. Eagles win 29-15. The Jets travel to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. The Cardinals, a bit of a hot streak right now. Don't look now, but they're on top of their division. They've won 3 straight games. Chad Ryland's been really good in the absence of Matt Prater. This is a team that the Cardinals, I want to believe in. I really do. They're not very good at using Marvin Harrison. He's a guy that I think they need to really start to utilize if they want to take that next step that they've been so close to taking. That run game has been really good, though, and that's where the Jets have been porous against, the run game. That's where they need to take advantage. James Conner should have a big day if the Cardinals want to stay in it. Jets are favored by 1.5 after their massive win on Thursday Night Football last week. I'm taking the Jets to win this one, but it is going to be very close. I think they win 24-23, and we'll say on a walk-off field goal with their new kicker. The Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football, favored by 3.5, travel to Houston. Houston dealing with injuries in that wide receiver room. We've seen CJ Stroud kind of struggle recently, not exactly where he wants to be over the last couple of weeks. The Detroit Lions, there's nothing bad you can say about them. They have been dominant week over week. They have not lost since week 2 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have been amazing. Jared Goff, playing like an MVP candidate. This is the most efficient offense I have ever seen in my entire life, but that is a Houston defense that will get after the quarterback, and that is a Houston defense that I think can cause some issues for the other team. We take a look at Detroit, and this seems to be a little bit of a trap game, honestly. People are sleeping on the Texans. Nico Collins might be back this week, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing for them. I think Houston keeps this close. I think Detroit still finds a way to win, but this one's definitely on upset alert here. Houston falls just short, 30-27. And then our Monday Night Football game. We'll go into deeper depth on the Monday Night Football game on Monday. But for now, Miami travels to the Rams. I love where the Rams are at. They're getting healthier. The Miami Dolphins also getting healthier. This is a battle of two teams that, again, you kind of look at different sides of the luck coin, very similar positions. The Rams are able to stay in it with a weak division. The Miami Dolphins, not really. I'm leaning towards the Rams on this one. Again, more in depth on Monday night, or before the Monday night game on Monday, but I'm taking the Rams to win 34-28. Let me know what you thought. I'd love to hear your predictions for these games. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to college football, a massive slate on week 11. There's 19 games that I picked out to go over. Got a lot to get through. So we'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, November 8th. If you are just tuning in, we just went over our NFL game picks, all of the games from this weekend and on Monday. Final scores predicted as well. We actually got one last week. We got the Monday Night Football game, so pat on the back for that. That's the first one we've gotten in 138 games. Not easy to get those final scores exactly right. Regardless of that, we have a full slate of college football this week. Some top 25 matchups in the college football playoff poll, some massive matchups in the SEC, in the ACC, and even in the Big 12. We'll talk about all of those coming up in just 1 second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all you'd like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, November 8th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we are getting into the college football game picks. A crazy week 11. It's awesome how many big games are coming up down the stretch in college football this year. It's not something you see happen every single year. There's a couple of small ones that I think would be interesting that I want to get out of the way really quickly. Minnesota travels to Rutgers. Rutgers has been on a slide. This is a get-right game for them. If they want to get to a bowl game, they're going to need to get through a really hot team in Minnesota right now. Minnesota favored by 5.5. I think they win this one, and Rutgers continues its slide. They've lost 4 straight. About to make it 5, 27-20 Minnesota. Miami, number 4 in the nation, travels to Georgia Tech, and this one is a little bit on upset alert. We obviously remember what happened last season when these two played. It was that fumble by Miami at the last second, leading to a Hail Mary for Georgia Tech to walk away with a massive victory, basically sinking Miami last season. Miami undefeated, number 4 in the nation, favorites to come out of the ACC. They could play spoiler right now. Georgia Tech could. Miami's favored by 11. That offense that Miami plays, if you don't play perfect offense yourself, you're not going to win. But that defense is susceptible to a team playing perfect offense, and if Georgia Tech can play ball control, make a couple of plays defensively, they have a shot. I don't think they're going to do it, but they have a shot. Miami wins 41-30. Florida travels to Texas, number 5 in the nation. This after Florida nearly beats Georgia. Obviously, Georgia is a team that took down Texas, so maybe something can go their way. Questionable is DJ Lagway. That's going to be the big question in this game. I think Texas should dominate. That's another one to keep an eye on, though. Texas favored by 21.5. It's a lot of points. I think Florida keeps it a little closer than that. Texas still gets away with a W, 33-17. First upset of the day, though. Syracuse travels to Boston College. Boston College favored by 2. I don't understand why Boston College is favored in this one, if I'm being completely honest with you. Syracuse is a team, well, yes, that they left an awful taste in your mouth with that Pitt game. That game was on a national stage, and that was their biggest game of the season. That left a bad taste in your mouth with the way that Kyle McCord played. But outside of that one, they haven't really played a bad game. Syracuse is a team that is feisty. They'll stay in the game. That game against Tech last week was really a masterclass in not giving up. I know that's not always the best way to put it, but that defense played really great in that second half, especially forcing a couple of key turnovers after falling behind by 14 points early in that game. Virginia Tech looked like they were going to run away with it, but Syracuse comes all the way back at home. On the road this time in Boston College, I think they find a way to win this one. Kyle McCord's been playing good football. Syracuse wins 31-24. West Virginia travels to Cincinnati. Cincinnati, criminally underrated team, I think. They're a team that I have in my honorable mentions for the top 25 here. West Virginia, a team that's just lost too many games. I think Cincinnati favored by 3.5 in this one, rolls. West Virginia is still a good team, but they've lost to a lot of good teams as well, and that keeps them out. West Virginia loses 27-34. We get into our first big game of the week, our first top 25 ranked matchup, as number 3 Georgia travels to Ole Miss to take on the Rebels. The Ole Miss Rebels, number 16 in the nation, coming off of a massive win in Fayetteville, Arkansas, destroying the Razorbacks, absolutely destroying them. 63 points. Jackson Dart sets multiple records. That is how you come out and you show that you're not dead yet. This is a must-win game for Ole Miss, and I think they have a shot to do it. The way that Carson Beck has been playing, the way that he has been unable to keep the football safe, if he does that again against this Ole Miss team, Ole Miss is going to make them pay. Now, Ole Miss has been susceptible to physical defenses. We saw it against Kentucky. Georgia definitely qualifies as physical defenses. I'm not sure that a lot of these other teams can play as physical as Georgia can, and that's going to cause a little bit of issues for this Ole Miss team. I think Jackson Dart has a shot to do it. I'd say if 5 is an upset, we're putting this as like a 3 on the upset scale, but it's something that could absolutely happen. It is a must-win game for Ole Miss. I think Georgia take care of business, though. Favored by 2.5. I think they win 30-17. Michigan travels to Indiana. Indiana, 8 in the nation, 9-0 on the season. They are looking for their first ever double-digit win season. Curt Cignetti does miracles over there. Crazy how fast he has been able to turn that program around. They have not only won every game, they have dominated every single game, and this is a Michigan defense that has been susceptible. Curtis Rourke, their quarterback, should have a massive game yet again. This is an Indiana squad that is going to cause a lot of trouble for these Big Ten teams down the stretch here. This is one of the teams that Curt Cignetti called out at the beginning of the season, and that might add a little bit of juice for Michigan, but I still think Indiana comes in and hosts Michigan, absolutely rolls them at home, wins 43-14. Iowa State, number 17 in the nation, favored by 2.5, traveling to Kansas. If you remember, Kansas started off the season ranked, and they've played a couple of tough games. They've had a couple of tough losses, but they almost take out K-State a couple of weeks ago before K-State ends up losing last week to Houston. Iowa State coming off of a brutal loss to a really good Texas Tech squad. They're looking for some revenge. Kansas is right there in front of them, and I know the spread looks a lot closer, but this is a game that I expect Iowa State to come out angry in, a game that they just kind of let slip through their fingers last week. They're not going to let it happen again. They're not going to underestimate anybody. Kansas is a dangerous team, though. I think Iowa State dominates 33-16. Clemson, number 23 in the nation, and this is one of the more interesting games of the week, travels to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a team that's very bipolar in the way they play. They either come out and they play really, really good, kind of like they did last week at Syracuse, at least for the first half, or they go out, they struggle, they turn the ball over a lot, kind of like they did in the second half against Syracuse. This is a Clemson team that going up against good teams has not looked good. They've played two good teams all season, Louisville and Georgia, and they have gotten absolutely destroyed in each of those two matchups. Virginia Tech is not on the same level as a Louisville or a Georgia. Louisville's not on the same level of a Georgia, but Virginia Tech's not on the same level as Louisville. But this is the kind of level of team where I say Clemson kind of sits at. They've got a better resume as it stands right now. But I think this is a very dangerous game for Clemson. They're favored by 6.5. I'm definitely not taking that. I think Virginia Tech keeps this close. I think Clemson still finds a way to win. I think they win 31-30. Undefeated Army, number 25 in the first playoff poll, favored by 3 at North Texas. This is probably their best matchup of the season. They should still come in and roll. They're getting their quarterback back. I'm not worried about this team. They win 35-26. Duke travels to NC State. It's part of that triangle, that rivalry triangle, but Duke is a much better team than NC State. I don't understand all the NC State love. Not a big fan of Grayson McCall over there. I'm taking Duke to win this one. NC State is favored in this one, but Duke wins outright 27-20. Maybe the game of the week, and I know we got a lot of good games coming up later down the pipeline, but this potentially could be the game of the week as number 20 Colorado travels to Texas Tech. I just talked about how Texas Tech is a sneaky good team. They're a team that was put 26. They're number 26 for me right now in my ranking if I had to go past that top 25. Colorado obviously sat at 19 on my ranking. They're at 20 in the poll. This is a really, really fun matchup. Both of these offenses have the ability just to go off. Texas Tech coming off of a massive win against Iowa State, a big win for their program. They're hosting. This is a very dangerous spot for Colorado. And if Colorado is able to survive this, I think they're smooth sailing all the way to the college football playoffs, at least until the Big 12 title game. That's gonna be their big test, but they need to get past Texas Tech here first. It's not gonna be easy. They're favored by 4. I think this one really is on upset alert. I'm gonna side with Colorado and their high-end talent, but I would not be shocked in the slightest if Texas Tech finds a way to win this one at home. Colorado wins 31-29. South Carolina travels to Vanderbilt. Both of these teams are ranked for me, 24 and 25, so I'm treating this like a ranked battle. South Carolina favored by 6.5 at Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt has kept it close, especially at home against just about everyone they play. Diego Pavia playing really, really good football. There's no reason to start to doubt them. I'm taking South Carolina, though, even though it is on the road. I think South Carolina has a couple more impressive performances. I know some of those common matchups kind of went the other way, but I think South Carolina with that explosive offense should be able to take care of Vanderbilt. It's definitely going to be close though. I think South Carolina wins 34-30. UCF travels to Arizona State, and I keep doubting UCF. I'm still not a big UCF fan. I don't know how they keep getting all this love. Arizona State is favored in this one. Scadaboo over there is a really, really good back, and I think he alone is going to be enough to take care of a lot of the UCF troubles. I think Arizona State wins this one 30-21. Oklahoma travels to number 24 Missouri. You know my thoughts on that. I don't know why Missouri is ranked. I can't believe Missouri is ranked, but these are both teams that I think kind of suck. Oklahoma, a team that has really, really struggled in SEC play this year. They started off hot, got as far up as like 13 on the ranking at some point, I believe. They've really fallen off of a cliff. This is a Missouri team that also has fallen off of a cliff. They were ranked in the top 10 at one point, and I mean, look where they've fallen now. I don't believe either of these teams deserve to be ranked, but I do think Missouri is slightly better than Oklahoma. That Oklahoma defense is going to be tough, but I'm going with the home team. Missouri actually dogs in this one, as Oklahoma's favored by 2.5, but I'm taking Missouri to win 23-20. Should be an ugly one. Missouri's going to stay ranked after this, and I really hate that, but that's just how it goes sometimes. Washington travels to Penn State, the number 6 team in the nation, reeling after their first loss, a brutal loss for them where they couldn't get anything going offensively. That's not what you want to see. I think this is going to be a big game for them. They're favored by 13.5. I think Washington will keep it close with that defense, but Penn State should take it easily, 27-17. Boise State, the top-ranked Group of 5 team at number 12 in the nation, hosts Nevada, and this could be a close one. I don't think it's going to be. Nevada's been playing a lot of teams close in the way that you don't expect, but I do think Boise State with Maddox Madsen, the way that he's been playing recently, obviously Ashton Genty, still in that Heisman conversation, kind of slipping a little bit after a couple of only 30-yard games, which is ridiculous that he's slipping after averaging like 150 yards a game. But regardless of that, I think Boise State rolls 45-20. 2 games left that I wanted to go over, and I think they're both trap games. Number 9, BYU, favored by 3 at Utah. And Utah's kind of had a nightmare season, a season that you want to forget. Everything that could go wrong seemingly has gone wrong for this Utah team that had a lot of expectations, college playoff hopes put on them at the beginning of the season. I know I picked them to come out of the Big 12. They're not doing that this season. They're here to play spoiler at home, a place where they historically have been really good, hosting an undefeated BYU squad, a BYU squad that's kind of played it dangerous recently. They played a couple of close games. I like this BYU squad a lot, and I think they're going to be able to take care of business, but this is definitely upset alert situations. I think they win, though, 31-20. And the final game that I wanted to go over, in Death Valley at night. Number 11, Alabama, travels to LSU. Number 15, to take on the Tigers. This is going to be a blast. Alabama favored in this one by 2.5 points. I love that LSU defense. And the question really in this game is going to be, what Alabama squad are we getting? Are we getting the Alabama squad that went out there and absolutely and beat Georgia? Or are we getting the Alabama squad that could not get anything done in the state of Tennessee? Which Alabama squad are we getting? That is what we need to know, because they've been very inconsistent. This is a do or die game for both of these schools. This is lose and you're out kind of situation. Playoff atmosphere in Death Valley. You wouldn't have it any other way for this matchup. I cannot wait to see what happens. I'm taking LSU to pull off the upset here. I think LSU is a better team just because of that defense. They've been more consistent. I love Garrett Nussmeier there. I think he's going to be able to make a couple of plays. This is going to be a tight one, though, and this is going to be maybe game of the week. They win. LSU does 28-25. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on college football. I appreciate everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We will be back on Monday, going over all of the results from college football, winners and losers, talking about our rankings, talking about everything that happened over the weekend, and Monday Night Football preview. Stick around. We'll be back for that. I'll see you then. You all have a good one. Bye-bye.
I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.